Leaders from major European powers expressed support for Denmark and Greenland in a joint statement, saying that the Arctic island belongs to its people, following renewed interest by US President Donald Trump in taking over the Danish territory. The leader said that the security in the Arctic must be achieved collectively with NATO allies, including the United States. For more on this, let's now cross to SABC News correspondent who is live for us in Washington. How seriously is President Trump's renewed interest in Greenland, being taken in? Is this, viewed as a firm policy position or something else like political posturing, maybe?
Well, Unaki, I think there's a lot of concern since the US extraction of Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela regarding anything that Donald Trump now says about other foreign countries. And it's led the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, Britain and Denmark to issue that joint statement that says it is for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. You've got Denmark's Prime Minister going a step further, saying a US attack on Greenland would spell the end of NATO. And, in the last half an hour or so, you've had the leader of Greenland saying that support by European leaders is important at a time when international principles are being challenged. This is not the first time that Donald Trump has mentioned an interest in Greenland. He talked about his interest in buying it. I think in his first term, Denmark and Greenland said that Greenland categorically was not for sale. And since the action in Venezuela, Donald Trump reiterated his interest in Greenland on Sunday, saying that it's so strategic right now. Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. Its location is strategic. It's becoming more and more accessible with the climate change and the warming of the planet, making it easier to navigate in those shores. But also the minerals and resources on Greenland is vital for the US's tech race with China. So given what's happened in Venezuela, Donald Trump's comments and that of his aide Stephen Miller, who said that no one would fight the US over Greenland, people are taking these comments very seriously, I think.
And in fact, I want us to, by way of context, Jagruti, just go into that a little bit more in terms of what is driving this renewed focus on Greenland. Is it, you've touched on it a little bit, primarily around the Arctic security, the rare earth minerals, or countering, in fact, the growing Russian and Chinese influence in the region, as you've just alluded to?
It's all of the above, I think. You've got the race for resources is vital. You're seeing that with the fight regarding tariffs and trade between the United States and many of its allies even. But you're also seeing that with the pressure on the production of semiconductors and microchips, but also rare earth materials that are needed to power so much of AI and other technologies that are out there. But you've also got this idea of that the Trump administration has of reasserting American dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This idea of the Monroe Doctrine that Donald Trump has been talking about, an 1823 policy by the then President James Monroe that rejected European colonialism. But it's about that the Trump administration has now taken as a big policy position of its own, which Donald Trump is now referring to as the Monroe Doctrine. And it's this idea of, as I say, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere as a driving policy of the Trump administration at this stage.
And I mean, just as we continue, especially just mentioning, China and Russia, what message do you think this standoff sends to these countries, particularly given what we've just been discussing about, their increase in the Arctic footprint?
Yes, I think there are lots of analysts who are saying that the action that the US has taken in Venezuela sends a message abroad that action without impunity is possible, that any actions such as the Russian invasion in Ukraine or China's interests in the South China Sea, territorial interests. It fuels their abilities to maybe take unilateral action themselves. Others are saying that actually, no, this wouldn't change any considerations that countries like China and Russia might be making in their own patch. But what this does is this fuels their condemnation of U.S. imperialism, as Russia has been describing it at the United Nations. You listen to some of the criticisms, and you hear China's ambassador talking about the U.S. trampling wantonly over Venezuela's sovereignty. You've got Russia talking about international banditry. So this is adding, fueling those sorts of criticisms that are being leveled against the United States, that they are trying to be the world's policeman without consideration for the sovereignty of other countries.